Welcome to Thez Nutz Garage, and today we're going to stop this chirping. Alright, so like I said in the intro, Phil here has this chirping noise, and I hope you can hear it. Sounds like a little bird or something chirping underneath the hood. And what we're going to do is diagnose and figure out what's going on with this truck, and then I'm going to show you what parts to use and how to fix it. So let's get started. Alright, so what I've done now is I've moved the camera a little bit closer to the engine and I've got the hood up. So that way we can hear the noise that's coming from underneath the hood a little bit better. So let's take a listen. Now, this could be several things underneath your hood that could be chirping or making this noise. I used to have a Ford Taurus that had the same kind of chirp, but what it was the distributor. And they called that a distributor chirp. And what I did is had to replace the distributor on that. Now this is not a distributor, and what I believe it is an idler pulley or a belt tensioner that is, the bearing is going bad. Now, these trucks have a serpentine belt. What that means is you have one belt that drives all your accessories, your water pump, alternator, air conditioning, all of the accessories on the front of the engine. Now you could have a bearing that could be going down in your alternator, like I said, an idler pulley or a belt tensioner. And one way to kind of determine whether this is a chirp that's going on with the distributor or say something in the drive line or the belt drive line, whether it's alternator, idler pulley, belt tensioner, something like that, is to just simply take the belt off the truck. Let the truck kind of run for a minute or less than a minute. It won't hurt anything, but what it'll do is it'll tell you whether, if the chirping goes away, you know it's on one of the things on the front of the engine. If the chirping keeps continuing on, then you know it's probably something along the lines of maybe a distributor chirp. Now, I don't know if these Expeditions have an issue with distributor chirp like the Ford Tauruses do, but that's just one way to tell between the two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the camera around and show you as best I can the serpentine belt and all the stuff that it drives. Alright, so now I've got the camera facing underneath the hood, and I've got the serpentine belt. You can see it's kind of running right there. What it does is it drives all the alternator, water pump, things that I mentioned before. It's just one belt. Now, it also has a tensioner on it. That's going to be that's your belt tensioner. If we look down, just below that, there's this little pulley right there that you see spinning. That is your idler pulley. This truck also has another belt tensioner back there. Now, what I believe that where the chirping is coming from is actually from the idler pulley right there. Because when I rev up the engine, listen to how the chirping noise revs up and it'll kind of go down and it's on at a different speed. And when it comes to the idler pulley arm that's right there, that adjusts up and down, and that's actually what keeps the tension on the belt, keeps the belt from coming off the truck. So let's rev this up and let's take a listen. Now, like I said, I believe it's this idler arm pulley. You can replace just the pulley, but what I've done is I bought a whole new kit, because while I'm here, I want to replace the idler arm, pulley, and both belt tensioners in the belt. That way I don't have to get back in here at a later date and go fixing something. So let's get the parts and I'll show you what we're going to be doing, and as we take these parts off, we'll inspect them and see exactly what broke them, which one determine which one we have. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is show you the parts that I ordered. Now, I ordered these parts from AutoZone.com, and reason why I ordered them from AutoZone is because, well, that's actually the closest store to me if I had to go to buy a part. So if I need to take something back, there's the store right down, within 6-7 miles of my house. So this part that I'm going to show you first can only be bought at AutoZone.com. It's actually the idler pulley, arm, a belt tensioner, and a serpentine belt. Now I did have to purchase an extra belt tensioner that we're going to be putting on this truck because it actually has two, like I showed you in the previous little clip there. Now the reason why I'm just going to replace them all is because I don't want to, you know, my luck is you replace the idler pulley because the bearing's going bad, and in a month down the road, the belt tensioner bearing went out. It's just, to I not have to fool with it again, I just ordered all the parts. It was fairly cheap. Just get it over with. The second reason is I'm trying to prepare this expedition for a trip we're going to take sometime this year to Arizona, maybe go see the Grand Canyon, and that's around a 3,500 mile trip for us. And I don't want to be on the highway out in the middle of the desert and one of these pulleys goes bad or a bearing goes bad, and then there I am stuck like Chuck. So here's the first part, and it comes in this nice box here, and this is basically a Continental slippery snake here. So this is a Continental product. I didn't know they made these things, but they do. It does not say that when you buy it on AutoZone. It just says you know, multi V-belt kit. You know, it doesn't say Continental. It doesn't even give a brand name, but when it came in the mail, it is a Continental. Kind of a nice box here, so let's slide it open. And I'm not sponsored by AutoZone, but if they would like to sponsor me on some of my builds, I'd be happy to take the support. And if you want to help support the channel or help support Thez Nutz Garage, hit that like button right now for the video and subscribe to the channel. And, you know, comment down below if you've ever used this product. Now the product number, this is a 98 Expedition with the 5.4 liter V8. It's K49231A. Says kit assembled in the USA. Now what it comes with is a belt. If you want the part number, it's right there. This is a serpentine belt. And this is going to be the idler arm and idler pulley for this truck. And basically this is riding down in the engine like this. So this is the back side that's up against the engine. This would be the front side that you would see. And it has this, you'll see this square here. This is for you to put a breaker bar or a ratchet on it, so that way when you're pulling the tension off of this, you just use a bar. We'll put one on the back and you'll push up or push down, whichever way it needs to go. That'll release the pressure from the serpentine belt, and then we can slip the serpentine belt off, and vice versa. You pull up or down on it, and that will give you the way to put your serpentine belt on. So this is the, like I said, idler arm and pulley. This was the other piece that I bought. Well, this is another piece that come in with this kit here. And this is a belt tensioner. It comes with one, where my truck has two, but this kit only comes with one. And that's basically this. Now what you hear squeaking or chirping or whatever you want to say is basically a bearing that's on the idler pulley. One of these bearings, either here or in a belt tensioner, is going bad. So that's where you hear that chirping, and what it is metal on metal grinding. Back to this part, this came with it. This is a belt tensioner. You know, like I said, we'll be replacing that. This is the other part I bought. This is a belt tensioner, identical to this one. And there's the model number and the part number if you need it. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and apologize if there's any wind noise. Still working on the house, trying to get this garage and all this stuff finished. So I'm outside doing all my work right now. So first things I'm going to need to do is take off this, I call it this is the box for the air filter, and then the ducking that goes back up to your intake up here. Just going to take that off to make it easier to access some of the pulleys and stuff like that. So I'm going to get to working on this, and then when I get all this off, I'll come back and show you where the pulleys are and how we're going to get them off. Alrighty, so what I just did was I used some of this Amsoil Power Foam from Eagle Lubricants. And if you would like to get you some this Amsoil products, Robert Rogers is the dealer that I use. His contact information will be in the comments, and also I'm pretty sure he'll comment down below this video, and if you have any questions you can just directly ask him. Now what I did was I just sprayed some of this power foam inside this intake, and basically because what happens is over time you get a lot of buildup, carbon buildup along the bottom right here, and what it'll do is it'll make your throttle kind of sticky when you first hit the pedal. So when you hit the pedal and it kind of sticks kind of hard, it's probably because you've got some buildup out here. And what I did is I just sprayed it all inside of there and around there, and just gonna let it soak. And when I start it up, it'll probably kind of run funny for a minute and it'll go away. But what it'll do is it'll help clean all that up. So what we're gonna be doing now is removing the serpentine belt and the idler pulley arm and the idler pulley and the belt tensioner. Now before you remove a serpentine belt, make sure you have a diagram right here. If your car doesn't have one underneath the hood, my suggestion is you look really close, draw out a diagram like this on how your serpentine belt goes around all of this. Now in this picture you see, this is the other belt tensioner that I'm going to be replacing. Some of these trucks have them, some of them don't. I guess it's per application or whatever, but I have two of them. This one, and then this is the idler pulley. Now, here they are. Here's the belt tensioner right here, where my finger's at. Down here is the idler arm, and that's the idler pulley. And in this location, right there on the back side of that, is where we're going to put our ratchet or a breaker bar, so that way we can pick up or push down, whatever it requires to get the tension off the serpentine belt here to remove it from all of the pulleys. There's my second belt tensioner right there. So we're going to be removing that as well. And then once we get the parts off, I'll go through them and kind of will determine actually which one of these is bad. And I'll also come back real quick when I get my breaker bar on this idler pulley. I'll show you how to remove the serpentine belt. Alright, so now you can see that I have the breaker bar inside of this idler arm here. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull the breaker bar to the right, and what that's going to do is give us enough slack that we can slip the serpentine belt from underneath this belt tensioner here. And what you saw is actually what I did is I just slipped it over the top of the alternator pulley here. So now we have enough slack that we can remove our belt. Now I know your view is not that great, but now that we have the belt tensioner off, what we got to do, or the idler pulley arm off, is we need to remove this belt tensioner and this belt tensioner. And basically these bolts are 13 millimeter. Now I haven't tried to unloosen them yet. What I'm going to do is the next thing you're going to see is me doing a time lapse. These nuts on these belt tensioners could be reverse thread, so be kind of easy with them when you're trying to break them loose. Make sure that they're not reverse threads. If they are, when I come back, I'll tell you that they're reverse threads, just so that way you'll already know, but just be careful. Alrighty, so let's talk about old parts versus the new parts. This is the old belt. If you take the belt and turn it with your hand, and as you're turning it with your hand, see if you see any cracks in these grooves. If you see cracks in those grooves, you know your belt's bad, needs to be replaced. This belt looks to be in pretty good shape. So what I'm going to do is put this in a small box, and when I take our trip out west, I'm going to take a just-in-case box of parts. So if some little things that might break along the way, I can repair it if we need to, because we will be out west in the desert, and if something was like this to break, you'd leave you stranded on the side of the road. And easy to repair and fix real quick, easy to store, so I'm going to take that part with us. Now this is a new belt. Even though it's new, could break, so I just want to be prepared, but that's the part number for this particular belt. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the idler arm and idler arm pulley. Now when you look this part up online, it says that this here is an idler pulley, so I'm assuming this is an idler arm for this pulley. So if it's not, comment down below. Now, this part is held on with 3 bolts. These are 10mm bolts, and when I put them back on, it looked like they had some sort of maybe thread sealant in them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some thread sealant just in case in there. And when I tighten them up, I'm not going to go to the moon and back. I'm not going to put a ton of force on it. I want them tight, but I don't want to over tighten them because that is a timing chain cover on the front of this engine these are going to. Steel bolts and aluminum don't usually like each other if you over tighten the bolts, and what you'll do is strip out that timing chain cover, and then you're going to be replacing that, and that's going to be a nightmare. So be extremely careful when you're reinstalling these bolts that you don't over tighten them and mess up your timing chain cover. Now, back to this idler arm, as we're calling it. This is still good. If what I want to do is, if I wanted to buy a new idler pulley, I could just reinstall a pulley on this and then put this back on the truck, and then everything would have been good. But I'm just replacing everything new while I'm there. But I'm not going to throw this part away. I will replace this idler pulley and maybe just keep it in their shop somewhere. If it ever goes bad again, I'll swap it out, you know, then, because I already have the part fixed and ready to go. Now, this is what I'm assuming is bad. I'm 99% sure that it's bad, and the reason why is, let's spin it. It spins real free, but it also makes this hideous noise. Now imagine this thing going, you know, 14,000 miles an hour while the engine's running, and that noise is only going to be magnified. So I'm pretty sure that this is bad, and I made the wise choice in replacing it. Now, this is the new one. Notice how the pulley doesn't spin so freely. It spins a little bit but stops, and that's because all these bearings are new and they're tight and it's all good. But it doesn't make the noise. It's almost perfectly quiet. So we'll be reinstalling this with those 10mm bolts here in a minute. And everything is a standard thread. It's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Now, the belt tensioners, I have 2. Like I said before, this is the belt tensioners. Now I'm going to stick my finger in here and I'm going to hold it up towards the mic so you can hear it. It's kind of hard to hear, but when I have my finger in it and I'm spinning it, it does spin freely, but I can also hear and feel those bearings grinding in there. These are 13mm bolts that hold these on. These are 10, in case I misspoke. Got the second one. This is another bad one. I can really feel it grinding in there, and I can also hear it pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is reinstall these back on the truck. I'll put that on a time-lapse video when I get it all done. We'll come back and start the engine up, listen to see if we have cured the chirping, as I call it, sound. All right, real quick before we reinstall the Serpentine belt, I used a little bit of this thread sealant on all the bolts where they went into the timing chain cover. Each one of those bolts looked like it had some sort of thread sealant on it. I don't know if it's just they're kind of using it as a light Loctite material, or if there's maybe some water passages that run close to those bolts. I don't know, but there was a little bit of some sort of sealant on each one of those bolts, so I'm just kind of using this the same way they did from the factory. Alrighty, so now let's talk about reinstalling this Serpentine belt. Now when I took this Serpentine belt off of the truck just a few moments ago, the way I had to get it off, because it goes around this AC compressor and it has to come out this way, which is in between the belt tensioner and the idler pulley. Being that this arm and idler pulley are on the truck, there's a little bitty spot, you basically have to push that belt through so it comes around and you have enough slack to go around the AC compressor. That's going to be the very first thing we do. And I'm going to try to show you this. Way down here is the AC compressor right there. And if you can see, here's the idler pulley and the belt tensioner pulley. We basically have to push the belt through this gap, and then we'll have enough slack to go around the AC compressor. If you can see it, you probably can't, to go around that AC compressor, and then we'll start routing our belt around all the other engine attachments, you know, the fan, the crankshaft, the alternator, and so on and so on. One thing you need to remember about putting on a belt. Here's the new belt. On the inside it's grooved, on the other side it's smooth. Never ever have a grooved side of the belt touching a smooth side, such as this belt tensioner. The grooved side of the belt always goes into the grooved side of, say, whatever is grooved on the engine. So here we have our, looks like our alternator, our AC compressor, and our crank pulley, and looks like the power steering pulley. So smooth to smooth, groove to groove. Alright, so what I'm going to do is try to show you how to do this the best way I can, and I'll basically show you the belt the way I have it. I want to keep this belt just like this, as tight as I can, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it down in between the belt tensioner and the idler pulley. And what that'll do is as I push it down, I can take it and wrap it around the AC compressor and pull it back up. Just kind of loop it around that AC compressor like that. We have to do that first. So I'm going to try to position this camera so you can see this, and you might not be able to. So let's give it a shot. Alright, first things first. If the front camera gets kind of shaky, it's because I'm pushing this belt with my hand and all that stuff. So here's the belt tensioner, here's the idler pulley. I'm going to push it right in between them. Push it like that, and you're going to have to kind of keep kind of jamming it a little bit, kind of push down on it, and it's going to go through. Once I get that through, I can pull enough slack. See my finger down here? I'm pulling enough slack that I can actually wrap that around that AC compressor that's down here. And once I get it around it, I'm going to pull tight. So now that I got it around the AC compressor, what I'm going to do is start routing it around other parts of the engine, the belt tensioner, alternator, crankshaft, pulley, power steering pulley, and etc. Now, one thing you don't want to ever do is, you see how the back side of this belt is smooth? If it's smooth, it rides on smooth. Back side of this tensioner is smooth. If it's grooved like the crank pulley, the other side of the belt is grooved, that means that goes to the crank because that's grooved. Always remember, groove to groove, smooth to smooth. So I'm going to get this routed and get it all ready to set it with the belt tensioner here. Alrighty, so with enough finagling, I finally got the belt routed the way it's supposed to be. I have my breaker bar in here on this tensioner, because what I need to do is pick it up. Or actually, I push it to the right, like I said earlier, and what that'll do is that'll push the idler arm down, and what that'll do is give me enough slack that I can take my belt and then pull it over my alternator pulley. So I'm going to go as far as I can with the belt tensioner. And it's going to be tight, so you got to really press and pry to get it on there. Now that the belt's on there, before you start up the truck, what you want to do is visually look everywhere and make sure your belt is in all of its grooves that it's supposed to run on, and all of your pulleys and belt tensioners. Now, as you could just tell, after I said visually check all your belts and make sure it's running on the correct grooves and all of that. The belt on the AC compressor was off a little bit. You want to make sure you fix that, because if you don't and you start up this engine, probably what's going to happen is you're going to shred your belt and you're just going to waste a brand new belt, because after you shred it, it's not going to be any good. So what I'm going to do now, put all the air box and things like that back on the truck, and then we'll start it up and see if it's still got that chirping sound. Alrighty, so now I've got the air box back on and all the plugs hooked back up, and what I need to do now, let's start it up and see if it's continuing to make the squeaking noise. Alright, so this is going to be the conclusion of this video. Now, as you can tell in the previous clip, the noise that was chirping at the beginning of the video is now gone, and that's because we did replace that idler pulley. Now, like I said, I replaced everything all at once so that way I don't have to fool with it later on. But if you're replacing an idler pulley, or maybe a belt tensioner, or even your serpentine belt, this video can help you or maybe somebody else. And if it did, give it a big thumbs up. If you just watched the video for entertainment purposes, give it a big thumbs up. If you did like the video, give it a big thumbs up. No matter what, just give it a big thumbs up. So anyway, we're going to have a bunch of other stuff we'll be doing to this 1998 Ford Expedition. It does have the 5.4 in it. We have soon to be doing probably some front end work on it too, because it does have a front wheel hub assembly that is going bad, and I need to replace that. And when I replace that, I'm going to do the passenger side as well, probably replace the ball joints upper and lower on each side, and getting ready to put shocks all the way around the truck, and maybe new tires and wheels and pins, so if the truck behaves. So like I said, if you like the video, hit like. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel, and comment down below if you've ever done this on a vehicle. If you have a question about what I did, or if you just have a comment to say hello and where you're from, that's perfectly fine. So with that, I'm going to get out here and pick up my tools and get in the house, and y'all have a blessed day, and I'll see you in the next video.